Live from Liverpool, we need to talk about ghosts with Kevin Eustace.
It is Sunday. It is time for the Supernatural Sunday Seance and Sermon that has become We Need to Talk About Ghosts Sunday Spectacular. So many S's there. Sometimes I wonder, it's a good job I don't have a lisp. Anyway, moving on, I hope that you're all fantastically well. We do have a plethora of paranormal experiences for you today, and we have a phone call. Yes, we do. We have a phone call with the wonderful Claire. We talk about astral projection, and she has a take on astral projection that I've never heard. Yes, so we can all look forward to that. We also have a sent-in audio file by one of our listeners who, do you recall, it's the same guy who sent in the amazing story about a phantom hitchhiker in the middle of the road, and when he turned around, he wasn't there. Well, it's the second part of the story from the same trip, and it's been a while since he's been on. And basically, he asked me initially if I could rewrite his version of the events, and I've kind of attempted it a few times, but each time that I've done it, I've read it back to myself and thought it doesn't seem to have the same sort of authenticity. So I'm going to play he's recorded himself telling the story, basically. So that's going to come at the end of the show. In the meantime and in between time, how the devil are you? Have you had a nice week? I've had a great week because we have launched season 2 of The Dark Paranormal. Yes, we have. If you want to go and find that, you can. It's on all of the podcasting platforms where you're listening to this, etc. Search for The Dark Paranormal. Season 2, episode 1, we look at Amityville, because season 2, we're going to start looking at some well-known paranormal cases, and then the alternate episode, we will look at, not necessarily trying to debunk them, but we look at the facts attached to each case. I've done it in a bit of a drama sort of style as well, so go and have a listen, let me know what you think. That's The Dark Paranormal, wherever you get your podcasts. In other news, Becca's over there reading a book. Hello, Becca.
Hi.
I'll just tie the microphone up so people can hear you.
Okay. Hi.
Hi. What are you reading?
I'm just reading a book. I forget the title. It's a story of anthologies from
Ted Chiang's anthology stories.
Yeah, you know the film Arrival?
Arrival. The film Arrival, she's saying, folks.
Yeah,
yes.
That was based on a short story, and this anthology has that short story in it.
Okay, so the film Arrival is an amazing film if nobody's ever seen it. I'm sure you have seen it. It deals largely with language, doesn't it, and the power of language. And the book you're reading apparently contains the origin story of that film.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's the story the film was based on.
Yeah.
Not the origin story as such. They didn't take it and run with it.
Okay. Thank you for that. I thought you'd be more entertaining than that, I'll be perfectly honest.
Well, I'm sorry. I'm just sat here reading and you suddenly...
It's okay. Anything you want to add? Anything you can try and slightly be entertaining with?
I really don't know what you want from me.
Fair enough. Fair enough. That was Rebecca, everyone, who we all know and love. Anyway, should we have a look at what weird and wonderful things have been happening in the world in the last 7 days? I think we shall.
Weekend Weird.
Yes, it is our favourite time of the week when we take a look at everything weird and wonderful and paranormal and spooky, etc. that's taken place over the last 7 calendar days. Now, in the last 7 calendar days, it's been revealed that we have one of the best pieces of evidence for UFOs that has ever hit the news headlines. UFOs. Nearly missed that one, didn't I? Anyway, pilots of a plane that was flying an American Airlines flight over New Mexico on a flight from Cincinnati to Phoenix last weekend have seen something, and I quote, ripped straight from the X-Files. They seen a cylindrical long object flying quickly above them as they flew their flight. And not only is this a news story, but as a bit of an exclusive on the show, we have the audio of the pilots discussing this UFO, or now they're called UAPs, aren't they? Whatever. We have the audio of these pilots discussing it with ground control, and you're about to hear it right bloody now.
Have any targets up here? We just had something go right over the top of us that, I hate to say this, looked like a long cylindrical object. It almost looked like a cruise missile type of thing moving really fast that went right over the top of us.
There you go, my friends, Romans and countrymen. What do you make of that? I mean, that's clearly an experienced pilot there on his day job, reporting something that you can tell in his voice he's not used to seeing. So, given the fact that we know, due to this thing that was slipped in the Corona Relief Bill, that in June or July, which is 180 days from when it was passed, the governments have to disclose what they know about UFOs. The American government, that is. So who knows, maybe all these news things are leaking out now because they're trying to soften us up for the big reveal that we are not alone. Who knows? I don't. They do. But we're all going to find out. Anyway, that's enough for this week's Week in Weird.
Week in Weird.
Now, it goes without saying that this show could not operate at all if not for the wonderful people who support our Patreon page. If you're a fan of the show and you like supporting independent podcasts such as this and want to see them continue, then you can go over to patreon.com/we need to talk about ghosts. Over there, you will get 2 extra episodes every week. Yes, you will. And today's Paranormal Sunday special, we're looking at some ghost stories from the comments of some YouTube videos, where you normally find people are a bit more, shall we say, amenable to writing down their true experiences. So it's a good little episode. So as I say, you need to head over to patreon.com/we need to talk about ghosts, just like these wonderful people have. The guitar's out, because we also sing the names of our new Patreons as a thank you, a little extra thank you. And this week we have the wonderful Terry Norris, Molly, and Mandy Carpenter. And this little thank you song is for you. Terry Norris, Molly, Mandy Carpenter. Stand up to Patreon and keeping the lights on. Well, Terry Norris, Molly, and Mandy Carpenter, you're really making me smile today. Ended it on a 7th. That was a bit Cat Stevens-y, Bob Dylan-y, wasn't it? I think. I wonder if it'll get removed from YouTube, as has happened in the past when I've tried to emulate someone. Anyway, big shout out to those 3 wonderful people, Mandy Carpenter, Molly, and Terry Norris. Don't forget, if you want to get extra content, all that good stuff, and help the show keep going, go to patreon.com/we need to talk about ghosts. Anyway, let's get to some actual spook, shall we? And we are back, once again with the illest of behaviours. We're going to go right into a listener-submitted story. Yes, we are. This story is called A Spooky New Build, and they've put in brackets, only use my first name. My mother will have an absolute fit if she knows this is about her gaff. Fair enough. So, it says, don't use my full name, my mother would kill me. In brackets, I'm getting my warnings in early for you. I do appreciate that, Joanne. Thank you very much. They say, hi, Kevin. Hello. Becca. Oh, you can say your own hello here, Becca. Shout.
Hello.
There you go. And the neighbour's cat. Sienna. I mean, oh, give the name away there. Neighbour's cat. Neighbour's cat. Come say hello. I'm a brand new listener, and now I'm officially addicted to your show. Oh, God bless you. I've always loved listening to paranormal stories and watching Most Haunted. In brackets, Mary loves Dick. Yes, she does indeed. If you'd asked me before today, I'd have said I've never witnessed anything paranormal. However, when I listened to episode 158, in brackets, where your listener was having ghostly issues in her parents' new build in London. Oh, I think, I can't remember the girl's name, but I think that's where she sent me a video of the taps going on as well. Anyway, some memories of my parents' new build came back to me, and I've started to make spooky links. Well, we like spooky links, Joanne. Everything I'm about to tell you happened in my parents' new house, which they built in 2003. So I suppose I wrote off the following occurrences as random nonsense rather than paranormal events, because who or what could be haunting a brand new house? To be honest, I still don't know if everything I'm about to write adds up, but it's pretty interesting nonetheless. Well, shall we see if it is? I think it will be, but let's go for it. This is Joanne's story. The house is built on a very quiet country road in rural Ireland. The road is known locally as the Red Road. More on that later. At the time the house was built, there was only one house in the vicinity, and even that was way across the field. It's a gorgeous house with 2 big bedrooms upstairs, 2 big bedrooms downstairs, a huge kitchen/living area, and a separate front room. The hallway is spacious with a wooden staircase leading up to a mezzanine landing, but for some reason it spooks the crap out of me when I'm there alone. I always put this down to watching far too many horror films. When we moved in, the house creaked and groaned for years. I knew it was the house settling, but there were so many times when I was on my own and thought someone was coming down the stairs. It sounded just like the creak, creak, creak of footsteps on wood. There was never anyone out in the hall when I checked. I always wrote these footstep sounds off to usual house noises, possibly for the sake of my own sanity. During the first few years, the house was pitch black at night. There were no outside lights and it was deep in the countryside. When we were only a year in the house, I, 19, was asleep in my room downstairs and my middle sister, 23, was asleep upstairs. My parents were away on holidays. I woke up in the middle of the night and through my bleary eyes and the dense darkness, I was sure I could see a looming figure at the bottom of my bed. It was a weird shape, like a person in a sheet with its hands on its hips, but no other details, just that shape. My knee-jerk reaction was to fling my duvet at it. As soon as I flung the duvet, there was nothing there to see. So I put it down to the darkness and my sleepiness. I did, however, let out a nice cathartic scream and ran to my sister upstairs. A year or two later, me and an ex-boyfriend were lying on the bed in that same room with the bedside light on. We were just chatting when his eyes went wide and he said, "Joanne, there's something lying behind you on the bed." To which I blurted out, "Fuck the fuck off. No, there isn't. You're a mentalist." Tears welled up in his eyes. He continued to stare over my shoulder and he began to describe it. "It's like an old hag. It's just lying there behind you. Its head is turned and it's looking at me. It's like a wizened corpse of a woman with straggly hair." I didn't know what to do. I didn't believe him, but I also froze to the spot and could not look behind me. He decided to look away from the part of the bed he'd been staring at. He squeezed his eyes shut and finally looked again. Then he said, "It's gone." We kept the light on all that night and didn't go to sleep. The experience unnerved me a lot, but this guy was not a reliable eyewitness. Along with being a bit of a knob, he was also fond of the odd chemical stimulant. So I didn't fully believe him at the time. I just assumed he was still a little off his head from the night before. I wrote the hallucination off to the horrors a hard partier might get on a Sunday night. But until the day we broke up, he swore on his life that what he saw was real. I moved out of the house in 2008, around the age of 25. In brackets, we were all slow to leave the very comfortable nest. My room is now often used as the nice guest room. Before the C word, me and my 2 sisters would regularly stay over in my parents for various family get-togethers. I also often stayed there on my own to house sit and mind the dog. And during these various stays, I never experienced anything except being freaked out by the isolation and the dark. However, my elder sister and her other half were staying over about 3 years ago in my old room, the nice guest room. They were getting ready for bed when they heard a child or children giggle over by the dresser. My sister's boyfriend is a matter-of-fact, manly Irishman, and he swears they both heard it. It apparently sounded like a recording of a child or of a few children laughing. They both said the best way to describe it was the sound of children in MGMT's track Kids, and it just came out of nowhere for 5 seconds. And now we get to the final bit of spookiness related to the house and its surrounding area. The following might explain the ominous vibes and strange experiences above. I mentioned that the house is on Red Road. The road got the name after 6 croppies, in brackets, Irish rebels fighting for independence in 1798, were slaughtered as they slept in a barn on the road. Legend has it the massacre was so vicious that their blood ran down the road, turning it red. My middle sister now also lives beside the Red Road, across the field from my parents' house. One day, she was out for a walk on the Red Road with her son, who was 3 at the time. The road was deserted, as it always is. He said something along the lines of, "There are people on this road, all covered in blood." I advised her to find the nearest holy well and dip him in it, accompanied by a couple of clergymen of dichotomous ages. So there we have it. Either everyone I know is demented, or my parents' lovely new house, and in particular my room, is filled to the brim with demons because it's built on a swamp of blood. Good times. The show is amazing. Thank you for keeping us all company in the dreariest of January and Februaries known to man. All the best, Joanne. Well, Joanne, you're very welcome, and thank you for sending in such a terrifying story. Oh my God. You know what's interesting? I'll have to reread that. Not like to all you guys, because you'll be like, what's he doing? But I'll need to reread that to myself because you ended it with the story about the Red Road. That's all I've now got in my head, because that's absolutely terrifying. But yeah, amazing. I do love big old Irish houses. I've got a friend of mine, funny, he's called Paddy. Becca always laughs at me because everyone that I know, like my granddad's Irish, or was Irish, and his name is Paddy. I've got another mate called Paddy who lives in Ireland, and Becca just thinks I make up these people because they have the name Paddy. And I don't. They're genuine people. But yeah, he's got a massive big farmhouse in Ireland, or his family do. And it's wonderful. And I love big Irish houses. Lovely. Anyway, that's bloody terrifying. So thank you, Joanne, for sending that in. If you've got any more, oh, and yeah, if anyone's got any stories that they want to send in fact, send it to contact@talkaboutghosts.com. That's also the address that you can send in any requests to actually come physically on the show and tell your story. And that's exactly what our next guest, Claire, done. Now, Claire has some brilliant little terrifying tales about our care home that she works in, but her main reason for getting in touch was a very interesting take on astral projection. And that's exactly what we're going to hear now. Like you'll hear me explain throughout, the call's a little bit crackly at the start, but it's completely listenable to, and it clears up very much so. Okay, so this is Claire's story. Okay, so it's been a few weeks since we've had a caller on, and now we're lucky enough to have one of our oldest, should I say, not in age, but fans of the show. And funny enough, it's Claire, and she comes literally from the bottom of my dad's street. Hello, Claire.
Hi.
How are you doing?
Worry doesn't sound too scouse for this.
No, you don't at all. So you're from Highton, aren't you, like I am?
I sure am.
What school did you go to, Claire? Just for the people who are American, they have no idea what we're going to talk about now. But I went to Thomas à Becket and St. Joseph's Junior School. Where did you go?
I went to St. Joseph's as my junior school, but my mum thought she was posh and sent me to St. Julie's for senior school.
Oh, St. Julie's is all girls' school, isn't it?
It sure is. Hated every second of it.
So what? I'm just trying to think. So if you don't mind me asking, how old are you then, Claire?
36 at the moment, 37 this year.
Okay, so you would have had some of the same teachers in junior school that I would have had then, like Mr.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't know, like Mr. Gallagher?
Mrs. Bickerstaff.
No, Miss Bickerstaff?
Yeah,
Miss Bickerstaff. God, yeah.
Miss Fiore.
Yeah, Miss Fiore was very small, and she was renowned for getting angry and saying, "I've had it up to here," which wasn't very tall.
Yeah,
really.
Which wasn't very far.
Wasn't very far at all. Okay, so our proximity to in terms of where we grew up aside, there's also a joint interest in the paranormal as well. And you've got in touch to say,
oh, absolutely,
that you've got two things. You've got a few stories about care homes that you've worked in, and also a subject which you touched on the show before that I've got a personal experience in, which is astral projection. So it's up to you, really, Claire, where you want to start.
Yeah, I'll tell you about that one first. Really. Well, that was the main reason why I got in touch with you, because the spooky stories are my experiences, they're secondhand, but the astral projection one is my experience.
Okay.
It was first time, like when you first move out from home, fly in the nest from my mum and dad. So it was my first flat. And I can remember I moved in, and this must have been like day 2 of moving in. I can remember having all my clothes in a suitcase, clothes out this suitcase and ironing them. So that's a specific memory I had, like 3 days, first time ever moving into this flat. And then about 3 weeks later this occurred. I had an afternoon nap one day. But you know, when you sort of like just lay in the bed, I weren't fully asleep, weren't fully awake.
Yeah.
And then the next minute, I can just remember being stood up. and there being like a glow, if you know what I mean. I sort of looked at the bed, and I'm still in the bed in the position I was in.
Yeah.
So I sort of looked at myself, and then I walk around the bed and exit the bedroom, and it was all one level, this flat. It was so my bedroom was next, my living room was next door to my bedroom door. So I make my way to the bedroom door, and I'm stood in a little bit of a hallway that I had, and I'm facing both doors now. I've got my bedroom door there, and my living room door just slightly to my right, and I look into my living room, and I'm there. That memory I had of me ironing clothes, there I was stood ironing clothes on the ironing board, and the suitcases there full of the clothes.
Yeah.
And I had this yellow aura's going on the whole time. And I'm sort of looked into the living room, see myself there, look back into the bedroom and see myself there.
Yeah.
And then I felt like I had a choice. Either go to the past version of me or stick with present version of me.
Yeah.
And I sort of chose present, if you know what I mean. I was like, I don't like the idea of going to past me. Don't know why, but I just felt I needed to go to present.
Yeah.
So I walked over towards myself. And then the next minute I came round and I'm lying in the bed again. And sort of sat upright and was like, ooh.
Was past you even the one ironing the clothes?
Yeah.
Yeah. And present you was the one in the bed?
Yeah.
Wow, that's weird.
But I felt as if, the memory that's always stuck with me when I came round from that, and then I told my partner about it, but he's a total Beckhead as well. Dream.
Yeah.
But this was 13, 14 years ago, this happened. It's never happened again since. But for those 13, 14 years, I've always had in the back of my mind, what would have happened if it had chose past
the other one?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, would have sort of come round ironing them clothes and gone, oh, I've just had a weird sense of deja vu.
Oh my God, you know what? I didn't even think of that. Because it's interesting, because when you say, we're talking, that it's a strange one, because when I say astral projection, and what I've always heard up till this point about astral projection, and indeed what I experienced about it, is one, in my case, as everybody I've told many times on the show, I was lying in bed, put the Beatles on repeat, and fell asleep. And when I got woken up by my dad, I said, all right, I'll be downstairs now. And then I lay back on the bed, and then I was sat up in bed instantly. And I remember thinking, I haven't sat up yet. And as I thought that, like a instant, I was back lying in bed and I couldn't move.
Yeah.
But I've never heard up until this point, someone coming out of the body and seeing the person that they've left in the bed, but also the person, another version of themselves, doing something
3 weeks from the past.
3 weeks in the past.
It was 3 weeks later.
And it's so interesting for you to say. I've never ever thought of that. It's a very interesting concept that it's felt like a choice. And like you say, what would have happened if you would have chose the person ironing the clothes? Would you, as you say, have woke up in that body and just felt, oh, that was a strange sensation?
Exactly.
That's brilliant. But on the flip side of that, though, you could have also relived them.
It's hard to be felt deja vu and we've made a choice.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but you could have also relived those 3 weeks and won the lottery, couldn't you? You say? Oh,
exactly. Yeah. Nothing exciting. Even like I said to my partner, even if I went back 3 weeks in the past, not much would have changed. But I just wonder.
Yeah.
Would it have felt like deja vu or something?
You know what? It's wonderful that, because it's almost like it's so good. It's like a Hollywood sort of script. I'd watch that. If that was like the premise of a film or a series, I'd watch that, because it's such an interesting premise. That's I think we all would. Everyone who's listening to this now would watch a program where the idea was someone could come out of the body and go into an older version of themselves. And I've never even imagined that in terms of astral projection until we've had this conversation, which is why I love doing these calls, because
absolutely.
It's happened a few times now where someone said something and I've thought, God, I've never, and I like to think that, I've got enough books on it there and I've watched enough stuff, as we all have. I like to think we've got a pretty good expansive idea of any sort of paranormal stuff, but that particular concept I've never heard of. Have you looked into any more and seen, anyone who's had any similar sort of stuff?
No, not really. And I said, it's never happened since. And I didn't, like you yourself, when it was your attempt, you said you were trying.
Yeah, I was attempting to do it, yeah.
And it wasn't. I was just having a nap.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just having a nap, and then like sort of came round from this experience and was like, what the hell was that? And I mean, even when it came round, it was like natural light then.
Yeah.
There was like no sunshine aura.
Yeah. So, you know, when, because it went a little bit crackly at the start of the call, which is fine. But just to reiterate, when you were first, that 3 weeks ago in real life, when you were ironing the clothes, was that a vision or did that really take place?
No, that really took place.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's what I thought. So you've ironed your clothes 3 weeks later.
That has happened and I mean, it was so mundane as well. It was nothing fanciful.
Yeah.
I'm just stood in the living room ironing clothes. It was like nothing that you'd wish to go back to.
Yeah.
You know, it was just a mundane task that I was doing. And
that is amazing.
Sort of like looked at that version and I thought, oh no, I'm safer with present. I know present, yeah.
So when you made the choice to go back to the present you or the version of you that was having the nap, did you viscerally walk back to that body, or was it just like, no, I'll stay there, and then you kind of just faded back in?
No, I had to walk back to it. I didn't I can't remember re-entering my body, but I can remember walking, because where it was, I was laid by the window. So to get to that bedroom door, I had to walk round the bed to get to the hallway. And I had to retrace them steps. I had to walk back into the bedroom, back round the side of the bed. And I sort of stood over my body and looked at myself. And then the next thing I knew, I was coming back. Like I didn't feel myself like floating or really lie down back in my body. I just sort of remember looking at myself and then coming round in the bed. I wouldn't even say waking up. It was sort of, I just, all of a sudden, eyes open and it was in the bed.
Amazing. And there was no like sleep paralysis or nothing like that? You were just there?
No, nothing. I've never suffered anything like that in my life, touch wood.
Wow. And have you ever had anything like it since or before, or something similar?
Wow. Never.
There was just to check, I mean, without sounding getting all doctory on it, but you wasn't like under any sort of illness or anything like that? There was no meds involved, no?
Nothing at all.
Wow. It is fascinating. I mean, like it's just having a swig of coffee there.
Oh, you're
like
right.
You say, it's, I've never, I'm a bit flummoxed really, because one, I've never really, I don't know what you call it, but it's not necessarily a doppelganger. I mean, again, it's a bit jarring for me because, in a wonderful way, because my knowledge of astral projection is there's two things involved. There's the body and there's the spirit or the soul or the ethereal form of yourself that leaves the body, and they're the two things that are involved. You know, one's attached to the other via silver cord and all this carry on. But I've never heard of that when there's a third thing involved, which is another version of yourself that you could place that spirit into, and it's fascinating. It is fascinating, and you knew from looking at it that was you 3 weeks prior.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I knew exactly, the whole setup, because I had a suitcase full of clothes, like everything that was set up, rather like the boxes that were unpacked, and perfect setup to a 3 week ago memory.
That is fantastic. Brilliant. Okay, so I know, I mean, and it's like late in the UK right now, so I know what's going to be keeping me awake tonight thinking about that. But what are some of these second-hand stories about care homes that you said that you have too?
It's only the one care home really, because I've worked in the same care home for 15 odd years or so. But
what care home's that? Can you mention it? Can you name it? If you don't want to, that's fine.
Not on air, but I'll be able to let you know myself when this is finished recording. Just
of course,
confidentiality and whatnot. You never know. There could be somebody listening. But I've worked in the same home for 15 years, and ever since the day that I started there, we've had residents that have talked about these two little kids coming out. They're like you'll go into a room and they'll say, oh, those two like come out the wardrobe, or they'll talk about these two kids coming out the wardrobes.
Yeah.
And obviously I work in an area where there's dementia, Alzheimer's and confusion. So a lot of the time, like when I was first hearing these like off one breath, I was like, just thinking of, you know what I mean, elderly issues. But then these residents that I've seen like pass away over time and whatnot, and then new residents come in. And these new residents talk about seeing these two children. So it's like people that have never met each other, the elderly that have never met each other, and they're all talking about the same things. Well, for a couple of years now, I've not heard anything about these children.
Yeah.
And I was doing a shift a couple of weeks ago, and one of the girls came flying down the stairs, like a look of shock on her face and a bit panicky. And she's saying, this lady's talking, like we had a new resident come in. She's only been in about 3 days at that point.
Yeah.
And this resident, no dementia, no Alzheimer's, no confusion. She is all there, fully compos mentis. And apparently Bernie said, she's saying the kids are in the room, and they know that I'm not really scared, if you know what I mean. I'm like the one that any strange noises or anything, I'll go look. So I get sent up the stairs. So I'm in the bedroom with her, and she's saying, look, there they are. She, like in the bathroom can. I'm like, look, absolutely nothing there from my perspective. Yeah. If you know what I mean? No cold spots or anything, but it's just the number of residents that have spoke about these two. I wouldn't say they're a sign of anything. It's just some residents see them and some residents don't.
That's so interesting, that. I mean, especially if, as you say, the latest resident hasn't got any sort of, they're all there in the mental faculties and stuff.
Exactly. And there was this resident passed away last year, but he was the last one that used to complain about them. But you'd go up to his bedroom alarm would go off, and you'd go upstairs and say, you're all right. And he'd say, you press your buzzer, what do you need? It weren't me, it was them two kids.
Oh my God. That's amazing. And is there any sort of history to the place itself? Because sometimes these care homes, especially like in the northwest of England, they're not normally new build houses. There's kind of converted mansions and the like.
It was built in the 1970s.
Oh, okay. Fair play.
As to what was on the previous land, I don't know. But what I can say, what I don't mind saying on air about its location is it's a stone's throw away from Alderway Hospital.
Really?
So I'm thinking, could it be linked to Alderway Hospital? It's literally a stone's throw away from there.
And obviously, for those who don't know, Alderhayes is one of the UK's leading children's hospitals. And it's been there for a good few hundred years, I think, Alderhay, hasn't it? In some form or another.
And it's the older building that I'm talking about as well. It's like it's not a far away from the older building, not the newer one.
Wow, that is fascinating. That is so interesting. So
I'm thinking, could it be linked? To there?
Because I mean, I must admit, I've always had a bit of a part of me's always believed like it doesn't sound like it's the same care home, but my nan went into a care home with dementia, and it was an interesting because it was a specific dementia care home as well, and I found it very interesting when you'd go in to see her. The way they'd snap it in and out of lucidity, and also like it's sad to see, obviously, but at the same time people deal with it differently. It was kind of beautiful in a way, but there's also I've always thought sometimes are some of them actually seeing something that's there that just the rational mind has also been cut away with whatever sort of parts of common sense have left as well. So do you know what I mean, like sort of as a wall breaking down that they've been allowed to see?
Links me into my next story perfectly as well, because where I do work, it's quite a big bedded home. Yeah. So we've got a couple of different sections, different units. And I used to work on one particular unit. This is, say, 12 years ago. I worked on this particular unit within the home. And we had one resident there, and he wasn't a very nice man, and he only had one leg, but he was pretty nasty. Like, you'd go in to help and he'd shout at you all the time. Not that that matters, we still do what we need to do. Well, anyway, he passes away and whatnot. A couple of months ago, one of the girls got moved off this older the unit that I'm talking about, this gentleman being on years ago in the past. Yeah. She went there years ago. She's like a newer member of staff. She's only worked there a couple of years. Yeah. But she worked on that unit and then got transferred to the unit that I'm currently on now. Mm. And she was talking about a particular resident on that unit, saying, because we're not an EMI home. Right. We're just a residential home. So obviously if the dementia or the Alzheimer's gets too much for us to meet their needs, we have to move them on. Mm. So this particular resident apparently was always like, she wouldn't sleep through the night. And she was always like saying, there he is, that man with the one leg screaming and shouting at me.
Oh, what?
And I sort of just looked at her I went, what room number was this lady? And she gave me the room number.
Yeah.
And it was the exact room number to this gentleman.
No
12
way.
years ago previous.
12 years ago? Oh, my God.
Yeah, he passed away 12 years ago.
That's amazing.
And this was like in the last 12 months that this particular resident, apparently she had to get moved on because she wouldn't sleep through the night, screaming through the night.
How interesting is that?
About this one-legged gentleman.
That is so interesting. And did anyone else who'd been in that room in the previous 12 years ever report anything?
Absolutely not. No, not that I've heard of.
See, because it makes you think then, like, does this woman have a gift? I don't know. Like, I know, for example, there's, I don't think I must have mentioned this at some point on the show, but a very close friend of the family lives in St. Helens, and I can't go into details of who it is, but anyway, he knows a vicar, and this vicar does a lot of charity work in hospitals and in prisons, and this is like a third-hand story, but the person that I'm talking about, who's a family friend, is quite rational-minded, and he said that this vicar, when they've talked about spooky stuff, has said his spookiest encounter was going into a prison, and a prisoner had asked to see him, and the prisoner said to him he's possessed, and the vicar was like, talk to him, saying, "You're not. I think you could be just mentally ill." He said, "No, I'm possessed." And the priest was like, "No, we'll get you seen by the doctors in the prison, you know, blah blah blah." And as he was about to leave, the guy said, 2 days ago, you swear, no, not you. He said 2 days ago, your auntie swerved to miss a dog in the street and went into some bushes, and she's fine and she hasn't let you know, but you just give it a call and check that out. And he said he went home and rung his auntie, and his auntie was like, "Who told you that?" "Oh, somebody must have told you that." And he was like, "No." And she went, "Yeah, the car's like in the garage now." Said he was driving down the street and he had to swerve to miss this dog and went into the bush. And I don't know exactly what got me onto that. I'm thinking more along the lines of, I think that he'd said he'd seen many people who'd claimed that they'd been possessed. Yeah. Is my point. So, you know, like where I'm saying, like, part of me thinks romantically that maybe a lot of people who suffer from Alzheimer's or dementia get the benefit, for want of a better phrase, of them being able to see spirit worlds.
Yeah, their veil's not as clouded.
Exactly. But maybe it's not the case. Maybe it's just in one or two. So, for example, getting back to that point, if that fella's lived in that room 12 years ago.
The 12 years, yeah, and she's the only person that's been able to pick him up.
Exactly, yeah. And in 12 years, only one person's picked it up. Then maybe it's not as prevalent as I like to imagine all rose-tinted glasses it might be. Mm. Interesting, though. So, how about where you live now? I always say this to someone just to see if anytime I talk to someone for the first time, I say, "Is your house haunted?" So I'll just start with that. Is your house haunted?
Absolutely not now. Not sure? That I know of.
Do you want it to be?
I just don't pick it up. One of the two, because as I say, I was in that bedroom with them two kids and nothing.
Yeah. Fascinating. Well, Claire, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you.
And you too.
I've found as we're carrying on talking that because obviously I try and do a bit of a softer accent when I'm talking on the podcast, and that's because it goes well wide and stuff like that, and you don't want people saying that. But I've noticed as we're talking away, I've got gradually more scouts.
That was me feel, like I said in the email. You had the potential to do that.
Well, no, it's nice to do. It's only really on the some of the extras that I managed to talk in my normal accent.
That was my biggest fear. I didn't want to sound like with you when you put the Gale voice on. I'm like, please don't let me sound like that.
No, you don't at all. No, you don't. That's my far-fetched one.
I do. I know them.
Oh yeah, no, they definitely exist. Trust me.
Yeah.
I'm related to half of them. Okay then, Claire, it's been an absolute honour and a treat to talk to you today.
And you too.
And I sincerely mean in regards to that story on astral projection even, I've never heard that. It's a fascinating take on it. And if somebody listening doesn't write the screenplay of that, then I will, because that's an outstanding premise for a great series of books. But in the meantime, Claire, is there anyone that you think might be listening you want to say hello to or anything like that, or anything you want to plug or anything?
No, I'm all good.
Okay.
Just everyone keep listening to this show.
Amen you. Okay, brilliant. Well, I'll let you get back to your beautiful dog, Charlie. And
no worries.
Thank you very much for getting in touch.
Oh, not a problem.
See you soon.
Ya.
Bye now. There we go. What was it like, listeners? I wonder, listening to two Scouse people talk. Did we get... I always worry that if we have a Scouse person on, and me being Scouse, because I try and, like I said, I try and enunciate a little bit better and a bit clearer on this show. Because the Scouse accent is renowned for not being very understandable. And I often worry when I get a Scouse person on that we may both sort of egg each other on and become unlistenable. But I don't think we did there. I think we both maintained a very clear, succinct accent. Yes, indeed. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. What an interesting take on astral projection. The fact there's two bodies, back and forth in time. Who knows? Who knows indeed? Now, our final story today, as I said earlier, has been sent in by a gentleman. I think he wished to remain anonymous last time, so we'll do the same this time. But he sent in an audio recording. It's part 2 of, you will recall him sending it in last time, his story of him driving down south, I think it was, and he encountered a phantom hitchhiker or someone appearing in the road and then disappearing. This is part 2 of that story. I've left it to the end because I would say, if you want to press pause on this, I would personally listen to this story when you're going to bed. And the reason for that is the sender-inner has a very relaxing voice. And it's a nice little tale, because he's very succinct in terms of describing places and stuff. And it's a nice little tale just to pop your earphones in and lie down to. So that's what I'm going to do later when I play this back. But for now, I give you the submission by Anonymous.
Okay, so here goes. This is the second instalment of the trip down to Cornwall in my little 1964 VW Beetle, which, as I found later, was struggling because of its carburettor, something I don't think cars have these days, but nevertheless I don't know much about cars. All I do know is it wasn't doing what it was supposed to do, but it did get me there, and we managed to hook up in a little fishing port called Looe, which is actually on the south coast of Cornwall, a place called East and West Looe because it's either side of the sort of estuary. And after meeting up there, they were camping in a tent, and I was staying in B&Bs, in bed and breakfast. Well, I think we stayed in Looe for the first night, but then, and I would have obviously stayed in a B&B, but then we made our way up and across the, I think it probably would be Bodmin, something like that, Bodmin Moor, and ended up in the north part of Cornwall, which was, can't remember why, but it was just it was a sort of like on spec type of thing. So we all just saddled up and ended up in a little place called, I do actually remember why. It was a place called Crackington Haven, and my brother had a friend he'd known from childhood who had actually moved down there with his family, and they were running a little seaside cafe. And when I say seaside, I mean this place, little port cove, it was more of a cove, called Crackington Haven, was very, very quaint. Not many houses. Probably it's a village. It was just a small village, and it had a campsite where we'd managed to get a pitch for me brother and his girlfriend for their tent, and of course I was in the car, so I don't know what I was going to do at that point, but anyway, we ended up in the pub, which was just across the way, and after coming out of the pub at sort of, I thought around midnight, it was summer, so it wasn't a cold night or anything, and it was a lovely evening, if my memory serves, and when we went back to the campsite, I needed a call of nature, so of course it was pitch black, and in the middle of the campsite was this very crude structure which served as the toilet block, and that's literally all it was. It was just a toilet block made of concrete. It probably only stood about, I don't know, it had a flat roof, I think, if I can remember. Very, very crude structure, and it was like ladies one side, gents the other, and it was kind of like the mirror image, and all you had as an opening, there was no doorway, there's an opening to the toilet. You literally just had like a partition that you was enough to sort of shield the ongoing whatever was, people's privacy inside the toilet block, and all it basically consisted of was 2 cubicles and a trough. Oh, and there probably was a sink with, I don't know, probably cold running water. I mean, health and safety was not an issue back then, and hygiene and all that sort of thing. It wasn't. I'm talking 40 years ago, so that wasn't a major thing. And of course, with it being a very small campsite, it mainly catered for tents. I think it pretty much was tents, to be honest. And there was very, very few people there at the time. And of course, what didn't help was because it was pitch black, and I seem to remember this place probably had one light, very dim light. Well, I asked my brother if he would accompany across, and he would just hopefully just stand outside and keep me company and talk to me and that, because that's how small the place was. Because you could have walked around it in 10 seconds. It was literally just like a couple of flat pack bloody garages stuck together. So anyway, I went inside, and I needed to spend a penny, and went into one of the cubicles. And as I remember, I was actually in the right-hand cubicle as you look out. I suppose the reason I went into the right-hand cubicle, because there was only the 2, was that I was near the opening, and I would probably only have been at that point about 6 or 7 feet away from where my brother was standing, so that if I needed to talk to him or needed to, chat, he would have been in earshot. And of course, he was just probably standing around having himself a cigarette. And then after being in there for, I don't know, probably 2 or 3 minutes, I heard the distinct sound of somebody coming in. I think it was, like either a very crude concrete surface, or like even quarry tiled surface on this floor. So it's obvious the sound of somebody shuffling in and making their way into the cubicle next to me, and that sound of somebody closing the door and making ready to do what they've got to do is very distinct. And I pretty much finished anyway, so I came out, washed my hands, went outside, and spoke to my brother, and said to him straight away, well, who was that's just gone in the toilet? And he said that nobody. He'd been stood there the whole time, and he was quite convinced that he'd not seen anyone, and he certainly convinced me that nobody had gone in there. So that shook me up a bit, because I was having to sleep in my car, because we'd all had a drink, and there was no way I was driving anywhere, so certainly not at that time of night, to try and find a B&B. So I knew I was going to have to sleep in the car, but the best of it is that, with it being an old VW Beetle, it was quite quaint thing really to have a car that was basically put back on the road and reconditioned. For me, it was even resprayed to a sort of quite a unique dark metallic green. I was quite proud of the little car, but one of the things that was a feature on it was the doors didn't lock. At least you could lock them from the outside with the key, but you couldn't lock them from the inside. They just had these handles that you tried to. I think the original locking system was that it flicked up, but they didn't work. So I had the prospect, because I obviously wasn't going to spend the night in the tent with my brother and his girlfriend. That was never going to happen. So I had the prospect of sleeping in the car, like pushing the front seats forward and making myself as comfortable as I could on the back seat. Hadn't given it a lot of thought really as to how I was going to sleep in the car, but that was probably what I was best to do. But now that this had happened, I was kind of worried that because the doors didn't lock and the fact that there was no covers over the windows and all that, I was going to be laying there with one eye open, thinking, is somebody going to try and get in the car, or am I going to see a face appear at the window? And all manner of things, were going through my mind because we'd had this incident where I was convinced somebody had gone into the cubicle next to me, but my brother said there was nobody. I didn't see anybody or hear anybody. Well, to sort of bring this story to a conclusion, many, many years later, I had the opportunity to go back to this place with my family, my kids and my wife, and this would have been probably 25 years later, and I'm telling the kids the whole incident, what I've just described to you, and of course, I was quite interested to say to them, we'll go and find this little campsite and I'll show you the place, where it happened and where this little toilet block was. Well, the strange thing was, when we got there, it was definitely there was. It was such a small sort of village, and I knew exactly where the location in relation to the pub was, because it wasn't far from the pub, and it actually wasn't far from the seafront where the cove was. So I found this little patch of land again, the campsite, and it was still a campsite. And when I walked in to try and find the structure that I thought would be the toilet block, couldn't find it. Couldn't find anything, no trace of it. I can't actually remember if there was anything in the field that resembled a toilet block, because it literally was just a campsite for tents. Now, there probably was, but I wasn't looking for anything as a replacement. I was only looking for something where I was pretty convinced that it had been stood in the middle of this field. And I'm in the building industry, and I know that when there's been a structure of any kind, particularly if it's made of concrete or something, that you usually see the impression of it in the ground for some time after, for many, many years after. You'd see the footprint of the building, of the structure. But this was just a grassy field. There was nothing there, and I always remember thinking that was really strange, because I didn't sort of try to find anything more out about it. I just thought, after having given my account to the kids and my missus, that on the return to this place, it seemed as though it never existed. Maybe it never had. And the experience I had that night was something that stayed with me all these years. So that's the second part of the story.
There we go. That was part 2 of that story there. What a very relaxing voice, I do say. I feel all relaxed now. Yes, I do. And we have another story they've sent in as well, which is not related to that, but it's very scary, I promise you. And we'll have that on in a couple of weeks' time. So in the meantime and in between time, thank you all for downloading this episode. Do go and check out episode 1 of The Dark Paranormal, where we look at the Amityville Horror. That was meant to be an echo there. And don't forget, if you want extra episodes of me waffling on about the paranormal, you can go to patreon.com/we need to talk about ghosts. If you want to be on the show, send an email to contact@talkaboutghosts.com. Okay, I think that's everything I want to say about the paranormal for this Sunday. Becca, have you got anything you want to add?
No, thank you though.
You're welcome. Okay then, guys, in the words of Jeremy Springer from the mid-1990s style, take care of yourselves and each other. Tatty bye.